I would like to introduce y'all to a scumbag. His name is Rahimi, and he's a violent, evil criminal who sold drugs, attacked people, and was finally put in jail only after 5 separate attempts to shoot people, including the police, in a 5-week period. And he is now the subject of the next gun rights case at the U.S. Supreme Court. Why? Because he also happened to be under a civil protective order prohibiting him from having the gun that he was using. Y'all, this is the guy the anti-gun left is using to argue that law-abiding citizens like you should be stripped of their gun rights. So in this video, we're going to go over this case. We're going to talk about what you're going to hear about it in the mainstream media over the next year and why that's hogwash. And we're going to talk about what we're doing about it and how you can help. But first, if you don't mind, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date with all the Second Amendment news and updates that we have. So, the Supreme Court just took another Second Amendment case. It's called United States versus Rahimi, and it's about whether or not the government can strip away gun rights based on civil protective orders without due process when no crime has been committed. Now, if this sounds like red flag gun confiscation laws to you, you're absolutely correct. The two are extremely similar, and that is why this case is so important. But, unlike most gun rights cases, this one arose out of a criminal conviction instead of being initiated by a gun rights group like us. Rahimi, as we stated, he is a violent criminal with a record. He was convicted of possessing a firearm while subject to a domestic violence restraining order, but they caught him due to the following. On December the 1st, 2020, after selling drugs to someone, he fired multiple shots into the buyer's home. The very next day, he got into a car accident. He shot at the other guy and took off. Then he comes back and shoots at the car again. 3 days later, he fires a gun in the air in a residential area. December 22nd, same month, he shot at a police car. Finally, around 2 weeks later, Whataburger declined his friend's card, so our guy fires multiple shots into the air. All of this while he's subject to a piece of paper that says he's not allowed to have a gun. Now, before we get into the actual case, there are several takeaways I want to point out. Number one, if you need a felon possession law to put a violent criminal like this in jail, you've got big problems, and the Second Amendment isn't one of them. Number two, he was indicted under multiple laws, including aggravated assault, which in Texas is a second-degree felony with a maximum sentence of 20 years and or a fine of up to $10,000. From what I can tell, he's in prison today. All of that to say, the criminal justice system has the tools they need to put criminals like this away without trampling your Second Amendment rights. Number three, that domestic violence restraining order he was subject to didn't stop him from attacking other people. Why? Because it's a piece of paper. And like most criminals, by definition, he doesn't follow the law. That is why many women don't even bother getting restraining orders in the first place. If you need a restraining order, it's a whole lot better to get a gun to defend yourself with. Now, with that said, this guy's conviction of possessing a gun while subject to a domestic violence restraining order is the case that got appealed, and that the Supreme Court just agreed to hear. The question before the Supreme Court is this: whether that federal law, which prohibits the possession of firearms by persons subject to domestic violence restraining orders, violates the Second Amendment on its face. Now, what you're going to hear from the media over the next year as the Supreme Court considers this case is an awful lot of hand-wringing. They're trying to put guns in the hands of domestic abusers. They're trying to stop us from arresting violent criminals and putting them in jail. This is why we need to take away guns from everyone, because look at this guy. And on and on and on. But that's not actually what this case is about. This case is about whether or not it's constitutional to take away your gun rights after a civil proceeding without due process protections when no crime has been committed. Rahimi did commit actual crimes. That's not what this is about. Again, this is about you. If you haven't committed a crime, getting your gun rights taken away because of a restraining order in a civil process based on accusations which have not been proven beyond a reasonable doubt with due process. See, this is what the gun grabbers do. They find scumbags like Rahimi. They plaster him all over the front pages, and they try to scare the Supreme Court into upholding an unconstitutional gun control law by trotting out the most repulsive example they can find, like Rahimi. At its heart, this case is simple. In the first place, you do not need to take gun rights away from law-abiding gun owners in order to put this guy in jail. Full stop. Second, if you can take away gun rights based on a civil proceeding without due process when no crime has been committed, you've basically rubber-stamped red flag gun confiscation laws attacking us all. And right now, because of all of this, our legal team is preparing an amicus brief to file in this case, telling the Supreme Court exactly that. You see, with these civil protective orders and with red flag orders alike, they claim that you have due process because, in theory, you get a hearing at which you have a right to be present. Here's why that's not true. Before you can take away someone's basic rights, they have to be forfeited under the law. That means the person actually needs to break the law first. The left is trying to drive us all towards a minority report type situation where you have a pre-crime division trying to guess ahead of time what people are going to do and arrest them based on that prediction. The trouble is, you can't ever predict that. You don't know what people will do. And if you try to go down that road, you're going to commit even worse human rights abuses than the ones you were ostensibly trying to prevent. To take away rights when someone has done nothing to deserve it is to violate everything that our country was founded on. Now, once a crime has actually been committed, there are many due process safeguards in our Constitution and in the large body of statutory and case law that protects the rights of the accused. It's all part of that innocent until proven guilty principle. That means that in America, we bend over backwards to make sure that no one loses their rights until they've properly forfeited them under the law. We're talking about the right to a jury trial, the right to face your accuser, the right to legal counsel, the standard of evidence being guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, if you're in a civil proceeding, like a restraining order hearing or like a red flag hearing, you don't have these rights. These protections are not present for you. You don't have a right to have an attorney provided for you. You don't have a right to a jury trial. You don't have a right to even face your accuser. In fact, in many cases, in many examples of red flag laws, the very first hearing that happens is one you don't even know about. And that's why gun grabbers like to go there, to civil court, because it's a whole lot easier to take away gun rights in civil proceedings than it is in criminal. But when it's a Bill of Rights guarantee, you don't get to do that. You don't get to take away Second Amendment rights without these due process protections in place. That is what this case is about. And that is what the Supreme Court is going to be deciding in the days ahead. Now, the United States, which is the petitioner here, they're asking that this federal law be upheld. They're going to have to meet the Bruin standard. So Joe Biden's attorneys are going to have to show that stripping away gun rights without due process is consistent with the text, the history, and the tradition of the Second Amendment. Now, they cannot do that. That is why we are very, very hopeful that the Supreme Court will uphold not only gun rights, but due process rights as well in this case. We are working on an amicus brief right now to submit in this case to really drive all of this home to the Supreme Court, and we will keep you posted on that when it's filed. As far as timeline goes, we're probably not looking for a decision on this case for at least another year, and we will keep you updated on every step of this case as it progresses. Now, if you would like to help us fight for gun rights in this case, we would ask you to consider making a generous contribution to our legal fund in the link in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for updates on Second Amendment news and litigation. Thank you very much.